Okay, so what about African Americans?
Well, what isn't there about African Americans? I think we are one of the richest in terms of who we are as a people, what we offer culturally. I love the diversity within our culture. We're a strong, resilient, powerful people. So, what is there not to talk about when it comes to being African American?
So what are your thoughts on the state of the African American community?
You know, that's a complex question, because I think there's been a lot of growth, and I think with growth also comes some setback, right? So, yeah, I think we are doing well economically. The unemployment rate, the last I checked, was the lowest since the 70s. So that's huge for us. I love the energy around entrepreneurship, around Black economics, and building our own economic system in terms of spirituality, that we're starting to get reconnected back to what that might look like for us. I do think the answer to that kind of may also depend on region. So you notice that there are certain parts of our country that you tend to see more growth amongst African Americans than in other regions of our country. And what I've noticed is the areas that are thriving the most are areas where you see the most cultural capital, where there's a comfort with who we are, right? I can be who I am. Who I am is celebrated and embraced. And so there's a connection to being supported in your community, right? That we can show up Black, authentically Black, and be able to embrace that. That's sort of, it seems like it's correlated to our ability to grow.
So for those of us who are not moving forward, how do you think we can, get each other moving forward?
So reiterating the cultural capital, excuse me, and getting back to identity. So what I'm noticing, and I think is one of our struggles, is who are we? And really being connected to what that means. I also think we have to come to a place now where we want to be able to accept that there's a diversity in our culture, right? I think at one point we sort of looked at African American as a one size fits all, right? We assumed that, we were all the same, we all had the same values, we all had the same traditions, and now we're recognizing that even within that, there's so much diversity. So I feel like we need to get connected to identity, and also some healing. So there's a lot of self-doubt. There's tension in our communities. There's confusion about identity and who we are. And there's fear. There's a lot of fear in so many ways that's represented. So I think, and a lot of what I like to focus on is the inner parts, right? We can talk about, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and, just get to it. But I think there's a lot of inner work that needs to be done within the African American community.
So what is your passion?
So I'm a therapist. So by nature, my passion is certainly about mental health. So mental health is my passion, values, social emotional development. Those things are so important. So the healing. And I feel like once we start to really tackle those issues and support one another and taking care of ourselves and addressing some of those the trauma, right? So you talk about the generational trauma and how we're impacted by that. That is huge. And I don't think we pay enough attention to that. Epigenetics research really talks about how we can pass down our experiences, our emotional experiences, our traumatic experiences, down to our children, right? And then their children, and then their children. So if we think about that, we have to focus on mental health, right? We have to focus on healing from our trauma if we really want to move forward. We got to be honest with each other, right? And start really at the foundation for us to grow.
How can someone partner with you to support your realization of your passion?
So, I could be, I could be supported. I don't want to say I could be supported. We can be supported by realizing that that's a thing. And because it's such a soft issue, it's a very sensitive issue too, right? But it's something that people don't like to talk about. I mean, mental health in general, regardless of culture or background, it's one of those taboo topics, right? We don't want to touch it. We feel like it may be not important. We want to get to work. But we want to get to work without first taking care of what we need to take care of, right? To do the healing work first. So if folks want to partner, I would say the first thing is to acknowledge that it's a thing. Acknowledge that we need to do the work. Let's study what generational trauma looks like and how that's currently impacting our communities. Let's come together and talk about what cohesion looks like, particularly in the collaborative, right? In this local community, we can start there. But joining our values work is also very important. Looking at what values drive what you do individually. So I really believe in value-based everything. Every decision that we make, I really believe should be led and guided by what our values are. The good news is our history is rooted in values, right? We are values-led people. The challenging news is because of that diversity of values and because we become so diverse in our value systems, we seem to be losing touch with what our values are, right? And what that even means for me as an individual. We're being led by pop culture. Pop culture doesn't really reflect my authentic self, right? Who I am, what my real values are. So it's creating confusion. And so really getting back in touch with what are the things that are the most important to me, right? And make that okay. I mean, even if you look at street culture, for example, back in the day, even street culture was a values-led experience. Regardless if you agree with it or not, right? The culture itself, even street culture had values, right? You didn't go after mamas, you didn't go after babies. And now we're in a time where it's starting to feel valueless, right? Lack of morale, right? Everybody, right? Anybody can be targeted, mamas and babies. So I feel like we're losing ground. We're losing touch with who we are, what our values are as a community.
Now, you just mentioned trauma.
Yes.
With regard to trauma, this is kind of like an analogous to our community. But does it make a difference if you're in a house and it's on fire, or if you're outside looking at the house on fire?
Yes, absolutely. If you're standing outside looking at the house on fire and you're just looking at the house on fire, as bystanders, we got to be able to step up and do something, but also want to acknowledge what that experience might be like, because that is, it takes a lot of courage. It's frightening to be outside, you're watching a fire, and you're saying, do I have the skills to put out the fire? Will I be welcome? Ooh, that looks like a big fire, right? I only have a cup of water. I need more tools and resources to put out the fire, right? So I want to acknowledge that it takes a heck of a lot of courage to be outside watching the fire. And I always say, just do something, right? So each of us have to be able to acknowledge that we all have something that we bring to the table. So even though that fire might be huge and I feel like I don't have enough resources to make impact, I have a phone. I can call for help, right? So recognizing that each of us have a part, whether you are in the fire or outside of the fire, we all have to do something.
How does your status impact your perspective relative to your passion?
So that's a hard question, right? Because my status, I try not to really make it about me, right? Because I really want us to get back to a we concept. However, I do realize that my status may help support other people grow or meet their own needs, right? My dad used to say, it's not power that's a problem. It's abuse of power or misuse of power that's a problem. So I recognize that I may have a status that can support others, and I'm hoping that it can leverage opportunities for other people toward whatever their goals are, right? To reach their own eudaimonia or self-actualization, wherever you're trying to go. I'm hoping that there's something that I have to offer that can support the other person, and vice versa, right? So many of the relationships in the African American community I benefit from. So I'm hoping that all of our statuses collectively can support each other.